So Rob is monitoring and will advance slides. So thank you, President Schultz, for taking the time to address faculty, and I'll pass it over to you. We're gonna, let me rephrase that. We have two people monitoring live stream or Zoom chat and YouTube live chat, so with microphones. So if there are questions coming in that during your presentation, they'll help me flag and we'll try and make this work. All right, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. And Greg and everybody, thanks for the opportunity to visit with you today. I do have a PowerPoint presentation that has some information that I think were requested on some of the questions ahead of time. So I will try and move through this quickly, and there is a lot of detail here, and I think some of it, a lot of it.
Just a little bit.
I'm sorry?
Sorry. That was just me being bad.
Oh, okay. First off, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everybody, all of our faculty, all of our staff for the outstanding job, exceptional job you all have done moving in such a short time frame to an online experience for our students, faculty, and staff. I've got colleagues at other universities, and let's just say it hasn't gone as smoothly at some places as it has here, and that's really due to so many of you being willing to take training to get and change the way that you do things in a really rapid manner. And I've really been pleased with how many people have put the student experience as a primary thing, and thank you very much for doing that. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So next slide, please. So I'm going to talk really about three major topics today. The first is the provost search. The second is I want to provide some very specific feedback to the on the WSU system strategic plan. And then the third thing is really focused around budget and some of the COVID-19 aspects of our budget. So let me start with the provost search. First, I just want to commend Julie Kamek and Stacy Pearson, our co-chairs for our provost search committee. 7 candidates were interviewed in airport interview style via Zoom. 4 candidates moved forward as finalists. All have experience at public land grant universities. 3 of those candidates are external, 1 is internal. And like we've done before, the credentials for each candidate will be posted online 48 hours in advance so that people can see their CVs and things like that. And we do it in that particular form or fashion. Updates, information, feedback forms are posted on the provost search site. And one of the things that several of the people asked me to explicitly mention is please submit questions for the provost candidates. We've had a fairly modest set of questions so far. As those interviews really get cranked up, we want to make sure that we're hearing the questions from you all that we want our provost finalists to address. We also want to ensure that whomever we hire as provost has some ability to do some in-person interactions. And so our idea is to take the 4 finalists, narrow that down to 1 or 2 individuals, and maybe by mid-May, we have that opportunity to have them visit home in Vancouver, a couple campuses, as well as to do maybe just an open forum Q&A prior to their final selection as our next provost. And so watch for those details, but we are going to have to be flexible depending on stay-at-home orders. And whatever we do, we want to make sure that we run a really credible search. We've got 4 exceptional candidates, and we want to make sure that folks have an opportunity as a campus WSU community to interact with each of these individuals prior to making that final choice. Next slide. So let's shift now to talking a little bit about the system strategic plan. Work started on the development of our first system strategic plan in spring of 2019. So this has been a long process. We formulated a group, it's a large group, in fall of 2019, really with the goal of guiding the planning process, helping with analysis of data information, and ultimately in drafting a plan for presentation to the regents in spring of 2020. I will just put this out there, no process is perfect, And I think the faculty senate feedback, which I'll address in the next few slides, one of the things that came back is that we just didn't have effective ways for larger numbers of faculty participants in the planning process. We had several all-day events and things like that that were right over the top of when people teach. There's always some skepticism. Is this just another strategic plan that sits on a shelf? The university has not shown over time the use of a strategic plan really to make strategic decisions. And so I think you add that together, we didn't have the faculty participation that we would have liked. And so one of the discussion points that I want to engage you all with is, as we move towards the WSU Pullman strategic plan, what can we learn from this planning process to make sure that we have more opportunities for faculty engagement moving up? And finally, I appreciate the work of our Senate Chair, Greg, our executive committee, and you all as a faculty senate, putting into reading through the plan, providing some concrete feedback. And I want to take a few minutes now to discuss some of those particular suggestions, comments that were made, and how we intend to make sure we're using those. So next slide. So some of these are, I took these statements in the next several slides directly from the feedback document that we were given. And one of the things that a system level plan must include: restructuring the multi-campus system to eliminate administrative redundancy, free up resources to invest in the knowledge enterprise. We started this discussion, the plan has pushed us to start this discussion more fully. I'm going to talk about the roles and responsibilities working group and a little bit of their recommendations at the end of this talk. But really, that's going to start with our new provost coming in, working with our current existing leadership team, and the plan as it is with some of the principles moving forward. A transparent system-wide budget model that supports strategic priorities is informed by the Fiscal Health Advisory Committee and is based on accurate cost of instruction. This is a big ticket item. It's been mentioned in one form or fashion, actually since my arrival in 2016. And now that we had, prior to the COVID-19, really had put ourselves back in the black as an overall university budget, Stacy Pearson and her team said, well, let's do this for the first thing. Let's pick one of our more complex college budgets and sort of work on what that needs to look like. And so the first one that they're tackling is the College of Nursing budget. This is done in conjunction with leadership in nursing and our health sciences, as well as AFOs and others. And so this is the initial foray into really putting together improved system-wide budget models. Hiring an experienced leader in enrollment management. I think if Brian speaks, he can speak more to this, but we are making progress on this. It's in process currently. A capital needs ranking system. The faculty senate talked to me about this a couple years ago, and Stacy Pearson, Olivia Yang, and her team, I know they presented to the Senate. They have made progress. We actually use that as we're preparing what we're going to ask the legislature for in the 21 major session. Scoring metrics, we try to make it much more open and make sure that people understand how decisions were made as opposed to some sort of black hole. So this is in progress, and we're looking to see how well it works as we move through our capital planning for this next time. Next slide. There was also a number of possible system level projects, both ongoing and new. And in the interest of time, I won't read through all of these, but there are things from philanthropy, how we manage budget priorities, modernizing human resources, a system environmental scan process, and so forth. These are all things that, as I shared this presentation and these things with other members of the leadership team, there's good agreement that these are the types of things that we want to be doing. We can't do them all at once. And so what we're going to have to do is, in a planning process each year, working in collaboration with the Faculty Senate, APAC, and other governance groups, choose some of these things as primary objectives, follow them up with appropriate budget level support, and faculty, staff, and student input. And this is going to be part of our annual planning process, where we, in the fall and summer, We'll choose these things, communicate to campus as we go around to the campus community. That includes the provost and president going to each college and other academic unit and campus and talking about what these are, time frame, and measurable outcomes for each of these. So next slide. There was some very specific feedback on the draft plan, and first lacked specifics and really how to, and I did not put that whole statement here, but as I shared this with some of our planning folks, everybody reiterated that this is just a framework, how campus units need to fit their goals and do plans at the department, the college, and campus level. They all need to be aligned, and this is supposed to be a framework, but this was not intended to be a prescriptive plan that says everybody must do this. Need for unit level planning. Provost Slinker has initiated this with the deans. I think there's a good need for all of our units to do more focused academic planning over multiple years. We want this, though, to be a worthwhile exercise. It needs to be something that people get behind, but it also cannot be something that is so time consuming over faculty who are already overburdened with administrative issues that they have to deal with in addition to teaching, research, and service. So this has to be something that is thoughtful, but is also not horribly time consuming. There was also a comment, there was an excess of assumptions which are not necessarily based in empirical data. We're continuing to work on that through the editing process. A comment that came back many times is trendy language was used way too often. Things like audacious goals and things like this. Much of this has been edited out. And then there was a need for increased emphasis on the importance of equity, diversity, inclusion throughout the draft. And language was included that could be interpreted as being coded by underrepresented groups. The language has been updated throughout the plan and scrubbed and will continue to be scrubbed to ensure that we have appropriate language for what we want to be doing with the WSU system all the way through. So these were very specific suggestions, and we've tried to take these into account as we continue to edit the plan. I will say before going on to the next page too, that one of the things is the number of us, I would sit down and read a 35-page strategic plan. Many of you out there would go, I don't have the time, I got way too much to do. So one of the things that we're also going to be doing is releasing this summer, along with this particular plan that will eventually go to the regions, is a very short version, 2 pages, that hits the highlights so that anybody can look and get a sense of what we're doing, what we're measuring, where we're going, and doesn't have quite the amount of background information that is included in the lengthy document that many of you looked at. Next slide.
President Schultz, there's a question online in the chat box. Could you, are you willing to take it?
Sure.
Okay. The question is, the language was not only coded, it was colorblind, and what is being done about this?
The answer is I don't know. The folks that are working in my office and the provost's office on doing the editing will need to make sure that we take all of these aspects into account. And I think in the editing last time, there was several folks that said, hey, there are some well-qualified people on our campus that can ensure that the wording used is appropriate for all COOBs. And so what we will do is when we have a suggestion such as this, we will ensure that we work with individuals who have expertise in this area to ensure that, again, we're using the appropriate language. Okay, next slide. Some recommendations that also were shared by the Faculty Senate. Write the Pullman plan to focus on a particular set of units. A Spokane plan under development will include nursing, medicine, and pharmacy. And these plans needed to link up with each other. They need to be similar in style, similar in what they do. And so Craig Parks will be leading the Pullman plan to be developed this next year. Daryl will be working on the Spokane plan, and we'll simply ensure coordination on plan development, format, and style. Extension was mentioned by lots of different groups as we went from the land grant symposium all the way through the plan development. And it was mentioned often as the system is stymied by an outdated structure constrained by county, state, and federal contracts. And so we're already discussing this with the incoming WSU Extension Director, Vicki McCracken, and the new provost. And this is something that we need to work to make sure that our colleagues in Extension have the support they need, that they're integrated effectively with all of our campus locations, while keeping in mind that Extension's like virtually every other aspect of the university, it is receiving less resources today than it did at one time, with higher expectations. And so we need to make sure that it's not just we want Extension to do more, but are they adequately funded to do the things that they need to do? I think one of the last recommendations was really empowering faculty to participate in a new authentic system plan that outlines accomplishments, honest about challenges, and use of the Senate to provide a platform for faculty participation apart from surveys and all-day conferences. And as I mentioned earlier, I'll mention again, we welcome discussion on ways to include additional faculty involvement across all of our campuses and all of our locations in the development of the WSU Pullman plan. Next slide. So I'm going to shift now to talk a little bit about some of the fiscal challenges from COVID-19. I know some of this information will not be new, but some of it will be. We froze executive salaries until July of 21. One of the questions that was raised in advance of this was, well, does this mean that all the executives were due to receive salary increases and that is now off? There was no salary increases that were necessarily being proposed besides the same type of increases that we would do in normal timeframes for faculty and staff. The president and other highly compensated individuals are working, taking 5% voluntary salary reduction until June of 2021. I have submitted the paperwork to do this. It'll be starting in my May paycheck. There could be further voluntary cuts to my salary and other highly compensated individuals, including our coaches. We're going to wait and just sort of see how things go on. At this time, I'm not mandating a particular salary reduction program. Some universities have already done that for executives, but I felt it was important for me to step out first and do this, and we'll continue to modify this as appropriate. This would be from now until all next fiscal year. A faculty staff hiring freeze in place with procedures developed to move forward with mission critical hires. We have many people that have questions about, hey, I was interviewing faculty candidates. We were down to the end. We're negotiating with somebody. Do I have to pull that back? I think the provost has been working hard with our deans and other areas and things that were really in process and near the final stages. We wanted to make sure that people could complete. Student affairs has really, I think many of you are aware that we had an appropriate student demand, that how come we aren't refunding, more types of things. Well, we made the appropriate decision. Vice President for Student Affairs, Mary Jo Gonzalez, and her team to return unused dollars for residence halls. That's going to cost us between $12 and $14 million in refunds and credit for spring 2020 housing and dining after the governor announced the stay home, stay healthy order. Housing and dining does generate additional revenue each year that is put into reserve funds, but this is a significant impact. And just keep in mind, this is only for 6 to 7 weeks of our residence halls. Governor Inslee also vetoed several budget items in the FY20 supplemental budget. We don't know what the full impact of these things is going to be, because what was vetoed was a fund transfer that had a bunch of dollars that was going to go to things like the medical school expansion, soil health initiative, and things like this. We will learn more in the next several weeks, and as soon as we know more, we will certainly make sure that we keep our faculty in place. There was a question about, will salary increase freeze for faculty members who have been promoted this spring semester to associate or full professor? No, that does not apply. Anybody who's been promoted to associate or full professor will receive the increment that they should receive as part of a normal process. Next slide, please. So some of the other things, our decision to move summer 2020 to online instruction also has a significant impact on a lot of our other programming that we would do in person in Pullman or other places. This includes some of our summer undergraduate research programs, faculty study abroad programs, university and college targeted recruitment and retention programs. A lot of these can't be moved online because of the nature of these. So we expect another several $1 million impact on really housing, dining, and some of these particular programs that have been really important to us, depending on when we can restart and start doing in-person gatherings safely on Pullman and other campuses. We'll know more there. I'm sorry, I'm trying to watch the chat, so. Yeah, and let me just make this clear. It doesn't make any difference whether people are tenured, non-tenured track faculty. If people have been promoted, they will receive those increments. The salary freeze has nothing to do with those types of actions. There will also be opportunities, and are opportunities, to get some additional one-time emergency support funds from the state of Washington, which utilize faculty research expertise in areas of significant need surrounding COVID-19. And if you appropriately would ask, well, what about my area? I can do some things like this. We are currently in communication with the governor's office to find out what areas of expertise and things that they say that they need. So we don't have a big list to share to say, here's exactly what we need right now. Those conversations are continuing. We'll be working through deans, associate deans for research, and vice chancellors for research to make sure that we are casting a broad net on any of these needs so that faculty and staff have these opportunities. I, like everybody else, saw the $2 trillion stimulus package, heard that some part of that can go to support higher education, and we are still learning about what those things are going to look like, what the timing of the funds is going to be. However, they're going to be targeted and focused on emergency student aid and direct support. They're not stimulus funds like we might have seen in the recession, where there's flexibility on where they could be used. I want to make it really clear, and we'll put this in writing and say this as many times as possible. None of any stimulus funds will be used for intercollegiate athletics. This is not stimulus funds intended to deal with the fact that the men's basketball tournament wasn't played or things like that. And so if you hear that there's going to be these stimulus funds and that's where they're going to be used, I just want to make sure we make that really abundantly clear. What is the effects of COVID-19 on enrollments, tuition revenue, state funding, auxiliaries, all those things? We are still measuring that, and data changes on a fairly regular basis. I will continue to make sure that we put out a monthly note that's specifically on budget things as they clear up and as we know more. And I'd urge you to continue to ask those questions, submit questions to the COVID-19 website. We're going to attempt to try and answer those as we know more. And I don't want anybody thinking that we actually know more, we just don't want to let it out of the bag. We are going to be open, honest, and as transparent as we can on our fiscal realities and things that we're doing, and we'll continue to do that moving ahead. Next slide, please. So my final slide is around the roles and responsibilities working group. And just as a reminder, this group has been meeting since December 2019. Chip Hunter, Dean of the Carson College of Business, chairs that. It includes Teresa Elliott Cheslick, Laura Greiner Hill, Sandra Haynes, and A.G. Rudd. And the purpose of that group was to start tackling some of the really challenging things with roles and responsibilities throughout the system. And A couple things. When I talked to Chip this morning, he, like everybody else, lost a couple weeks on these kind of projects dealing with moving to online instruction and some of the things that have happened to all of us in terms of our time commitment. They have been meeting again. So he expects a report to be complete by mid-May next month, and it may be done a little bit sooner. And if it is, we'll put it out as soon as possible. And we'll ask Greg and the Faculty Senate Executive Committee to broadly distribute that throughout WSU. Some of the highlights he shared with me today as they continue to kind of work through this. One WSU, one degree will continue to be a core principle for the WSU system. That is important. There's no desire to necessarily change that. An innovative organizational structure can be a strength and not a weakness if we execute it well. And you can go, well, Kirk, that's just an obvious statement. But I think we can get too hung up on the structure sometimes, and structure is important, but we also need to make sure that we're executing in a consistent manner. They're going to recommend a matrix model for academic issues. We operate this way in some regards right now, but we don't necessarily operate completely this way. Each campus will need to have a clear mission, and this includes Pullman. And I think using terms like the flagship campus makes a lot of sense for us. We need to define what that is and make sure that we have a clear mission for what we want to do in Pullman, and that our other campuses also have clear declared missions so that it's clear what people are doing, why they're doing it, and what that staffing needs to look like. One of the pain points is most vice presidents wear two hats. They have a system hat and a Pullman hat. And a lot of times these roles, jobs, and decisions are conflated. And there needs to be clear clarification on when it's a system decision, when it's a Pullman decision. And this doesn't mean adding another layer of bureaucracy and a bunch of additional highly paid executives. We don't need additional people. We need to clarify roles, responsibilities, and which decisions affect either the system or the Pullman campus. Finally, we found, and I appreciate our colleagues in Vancouver, there was back in 2004, there was significant challenges with the way the system was operating. There was a lot of suggestions made in 2004 that actually were never implemented. So in pulling out some of these documents from 2004, eerily, a lot of the challenges we're seeing today were seen back then. And there was different sets of working groups and governance that were proposed back then that also make a lot of sense. And we want to explore some of those a little bit further. Now, I want to make it clear, this is not the extent of their report. They have some other recommendations, including where vice presidents report and changing some of the way that we operate that will be more controversial and generate more discussion and dialogue. But Chip asked that, hey, this is not all done yet. We haven't thought it all out. So this is just a little bit of a taste of some of what that group has been working on. So with that, next slide, I think that's the last one. And Greg, I am happy to answer any further questions that people might have.
Okay, so
Yeah, I have one online if possible.
shoot.
Mr. President, you've said that the stimulus funds won't be used for athletics. Can you say the same for the university's reserve accounts?
I don't know what we're going to wind up doing with, we don't know what the athletics budget's going to look like. We don't know, for example, what the Pac-12 distribution is going to be. So if the comment is, are we going to take reserve funds from whomever and give some of those monies to athletics to help balance their budget, the answer is no, we're not going to do that. Athletics does have, like several units, a cumulative deficit, and at the end of the year, we wind up having to make sure that we can cover that deficit with university reserve funds. That has not changed. That's been that way for years. So just to be clear, we are not taking reserve funds from any academic unit and moving them over to intercollegiate athletics. I can tell you that we are not going to do that.
Okay, now any of the participants on Zoom, you can unmute yourself if you'd like to ask President Schultz questions. So we have no online questions, none from YouTube. Oh, so here's one. It says the Chronicle reported today that WSU would get $21 million from the COVID funding. Will this be used for students as you discussed?
The answer is that I don't know. We don't have the guidelines yet on how those dollars can be used. I mean, of course, we're going to use them the way they were intended to. I'm not trying to be evasive there. It's that the feds came out very early. There's going to be a lot of money, and now the devil's in the details. So 21 million is a substantial dollar figure to assist our students in need and the university in delivering the education to those particular students. And what we'll wind up doing is, as we have more details exactly how those dollars will be used, we will put those out. We'll make sure the university community sees those and sees exactly how those dollars will be spent.
Okay, and another question from Senator Carroll. You have an executive committee making day-to-day decisions due to the crisis. Would you consider adding a rep from faculty leadership to this group?
So, great question. And it's a crisis management team that's actually pretty defined in scope and structure. And Greg brought this up when we met with Faculty Senate Executive Committee. That group was put in place not to be a permanent group. It was sort of to get us through several weeks. What I'm talking to the cabinet over the next 2 weeks of doing is putting together some small work groups on very specific types of things moving ahead that are not just policy, but online education. What sort of things have we learned? How are we going to deal with some of the budget issues? And what we want to do is, in that particular case, on those working groups that we hope to put together in May, we will ask the Faculty Senate specifically for representation on each of those particular groups so that there is a clear faculty voice on those. Those groups are not intended to be 20 people or 25 people, 5, 6, 7 type of people. So I will ensure that there is a plenty and appropriate faculty voice on decisions moving forward.
Can you comment on the level of diversity there is in the 4 provost candidates?
Yeah, we have 1 candidate of color, 2 women candidates, and 1 white male candidate. So the search committee did a fantastic job at building a diverse pool of finalists that have different backgrounds, and I think people are going to enjoy having a chance to interact with all 4 of them.
Great. Will WSU Vancouver still be required to build reserves in the fall due to financial problems caused by COVID?
I'm just going to say, I don't know that. That's a appropriately detailed question that we'll make sure we take up with the chancellor, Stacy, and others. And so I don't know the answer to that.
Fair enough. Probably another detailed one. How long do you anticipate the hiring freeze will last, and how will it affect faculty hires?
You know, I don't know how long the hiring freeze will last. I think hiring freezes sometimes last for multiple years. I think, for example, the process that's been put in place by our last several provosts working with deans were to submit a hiring plan that the dean sent forward to the provost. And once there was an approval of that hiring plan, the college or unit just went off and they did hiring like they always do. I don't see that as really changing dramatically moving ahead. I think you still have those communications back and forth. The real issue is we just don't know what the state of Washington's impact due to the budget issues that the state's going to have will have on higher ed. And it could be that we have a hiring slowdown for a couple of years. It could be a pretty hard freeze for a couple of years. We just will know more in the next couple of months. I would say it will be throughout the next academic year, but that could change, hopefully for the better. But I think we should plan on that.
Will you
Um,
have another? Oh, sorry.
that's all right. I'm reading them as they come up. So,
I know if you read them, can you read them out loud? Some people don't have active chats.
yeah, one of the question is there a freeze on hiring administrators? And um, I would say it depends on how you want to state that, because if I said, oh yeah, there's an absolute freeze, you go, well, what are you going to do about the provost? So I think if we have active searches ongoing, the answer is yes. Are we going to add new administrative positions that nobody's heard about over the next academic year? The answer to that is no. So the two administrative positions that I'm aware of that are out there right now are the provost, and we're doing finalists, and we're also hiring an enrollment management person to replace a retirement that's really critical to our long-term success at Pullman and as a system, and that search is ongoing. So that's why if I say no, when then somebody comes back and says, well, how come you're hiring this person? I don't want to come across as disingenuous, but no, we are not going to be approving new administrative positions over the next academic year.
Any other questions? Oh. Okay.
I'll read it.
Okay.
What is the status of the investigation into bias and the handling of former Provost Montoya? Transparency was promised. There haven't been public updates for a while. Will it be available to candidates for provost? Appropriately, since I'm part of the investigation, not the investigating team, but being investigated, all I know is that the attorney that was hired in conjunction with the faculty senate to do this is continuing their interviews, and they were doing additional interviews this week. So Danielle Hess could provide a better set of data and information. Will it be made available to the provost candidates? It'll be made available when it's done to everybody. And I'm happy to explicitly make sure the provost candidates see it, but it depends on when it's done. And so again, I think we promised at the beginning in conjunction with Greg that whenever it was done, whatever it says, we're going to make this a public document. So I would say all the finalists, and I've talked to several, are very aware of what happened previously, and we're all very interested in coming to WSU in spite of, if you will, a short tenure of Provost Montoya.
And I'd like to tell the Senate too, I have an update on that as well from Danielle Hess.
Good, excellent.
So will we be able to fill existing administrative positions, i.e. the ones that have been or will be vacated? I think you already answered that, did you not?
I believe so. I think if it's a position that somebody currently held and left for some particular reason, to me, we will ask ourselves, just like with faculty and staff, administration, same thing, is it mission critical? If, for example, we lost somebody that is in grant processing or something like that, that is very mission critical to WSU, that's the kind of position that we would say we probably need to go do. If there are other positions that would not be deemed mission critical, then we may have to postpone doing some of that hiring. And we've tried to put in place a process that's clear, that we've used in the past at WSU. It's not a new one. And so we just want to be really careful with hiring as much as we can until the budget picture clears up. And it's always easier to not hire somebody than to withdraw an offer or something like that. And that's why I just think being prudent for the next several months is going to be really incumbent upon all of us.
Will faculty lines? So I think you also answered this one. Will faculty lines be eliminated during the freeze and unable to be refilled? Oh,
I don't. Right now, we are not eliminating anything, and I think we want to make that clear. And I know some groups on campus, because of when the COVID restrictions came into place, were down to several finalists and a faculty hire, but couldn't bring the candidates to campus or campus location, and elected to say we need to postpone the hiring because we want to actually meet in person a future colleague. So I don't think we have any plans at this point to eliminate any particular faculty lines. People may need to wait a little bit to fill it, depending on how things go fiscally or in a search. But again, that'll be handled with deans and the provost. And if Brian's going to talk at all today, this is probably better answered actually by him.
Okay, so we have a question from YouTube.
I have a question from the YouTube channel. What have discussions about the start of the fall semester entailed? What are you anticipating? What might be happening?
I had a discussion yesterday with somebody about whether or not we were going to play football this fall. Everybody is now appropriately asking questions about what's going to happen in August and September. I think it's just too preliminary for us to know. Right now, we're planning on holding in-person classes, having residence halls with students, and returning back to something that is different than what we're doing now. And it may not be completely what things look like in December of this last year. Will there be some required social distancing and some things like that? The answer is I don't know, but one of the groups I was talking about forming that we want faculty involvement, engagement in is how can we start doing some of that planning? What could it look like to have some social distancing put in place? How's that going to affect our classroom and research environments? And so there's been some speculation, I'll put it that way, on what fall could look like, but we need to spend the summer really working on this.
President Schultz,
Okay.
on that note, I'm just wondering, have you guys thought about the faculty of vulnerable faculty that are in vulnerable age groups, and how you might handle that in the fall?
We have not, and I know this was a question, a great question I might add, that was asked ahead of time. If anything, one of the questions I want us to answer more broadly, and I want to get to yours, is what have we learned? What will we learn when we get through the end of the semester that could potentially be the types of things that we say, this may be a little better way for us to do things. I think some of those vulnerable faculty and staff, maybe what we learned from some of this is that you can have an educational experience, a quality one, or quality work experience where people are not sitting physically present. Teaching doesn't have to be all in a classroom. And so what may happen and come out of this is actually greater flexibility that we have with our faculty colleagues than we might have had a few weeks ago. And so I want us to be thinking creatively about how we can learn from this experience and maybe make our workplace and our education style a little more flexible, a little bit more different, and maybe a little more encompassing to more of our colleagues.
So we have another question online. Will chairs have specific times to meet with the provost candidates? This was a question last fall to which we were told yes, but the description of the process outlined today didn't include this.
I think we are into the provost search scheduling pretty heavily. I think we got a candidate on Monday. So I think that probably in this round, the answer would be no. And you got to remember, we had a schedule worked out with a lot of this kind of stuff when we thought we were going to be doing a couple days, 2.5 days almost of in-person interviews. And we've tried to cut some of this down a bit. I will say, though, that part of the reason for having that interaction, that narrowing it down to 1 or 2, is I think that would be, at that particular point, it's a narrow pool, maybe an individual, where we can do more of these meetings specifically around academic issues like this, and that may be a good way to do that. So I appreciate Pamela's comment there.
Okay, another from YouTube.
Speaking of vulnerable faculty, has there been any discussion of providing our adjunct faculty with bonuses for the incredible above and beyond work they have been required to do?
We have not discussed any sort of bonuses, additional pay, compensation related issues. for any faculty status or any staff members, administrators, anybody based on this. Does that say that we shouldn't? Absolutely not. But that has not been part of our conversation to date. And I would encourage senators, if they think that that is something that really should be taken into account, work through the Faculty Senate Executive Committee. And we always want to take feedback from our faculty on things that we need to be thinking about. I think for the first few weeks, right or wrong, we were just very focused on, are we going to get our classes online and delivered to students on time? And what's happened is now that that is moving along, I think now more of these things are coming up to say, these are things that we need to be dealing with and not dealing with in 6 months, but dealing with fairly immediately. So let's bring that forward. I'll ask that Greg and our Senate Executive Committee put that on a list and we can follow up further discussion.
Great. Any other questions?
There's one further one. Let's make this the last one because I know you all, I've taken up a lot of your time. The question is, what are the chances that we will continue with full online coursework in the fall? Is that considered as a possibility? At this particular point, I don't feel that that is really being seen as a possibility. I think if we have to go to complete online courses in the fall, we could do it. I think we have got a lot of other economic challenges in our country. If we are at a point in August and September that is in a lockdown phase like we are now, that will be probably the least of our worries at that particular point. So again, we want to be creative. We want to make sure people are safe, including students, faculty, and staff, and that we do it in a responsible way. We've got a lot of creative ideas out there. Let's get a university community together and see if we can't come up with great ways to manage this coming into the fall semester. But anyway, thank you all. I appreciate the questions. If there's other things that we did not get to, always give it to the Faculty Senate Executive Committee, Greg, and colleagues, and we'll make sure that we get answers to you. And hope to a bunch of you can join us tomorrow for our next COVID town hall. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, President Schultz, for taking the time to do this. It really did help a lot. And I would, ordinarily, we would applaud, but I don't really know how to do that over Zoom. So anyway, you have
Thank you
our
all.
thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. So that, for those listening just for the President's talk, that concludes, and we will now move on to normal Senate business. So we have made quorum, and I will call the meeting to order. And the first, this is a little bit out of order. The first item, we will have Becky Bitter move for the undergraduate and professional degrees. Becky?
Hello, and thank you all for being so amazing with your flexibility these days. It's my privilege always to move that the university faculty recommend to the President and the Board of Regents that effective at the closing date for each graduating class, those undergraduate and professional students who have completed degree requirements and whose names remain on the official list of degree candidates be advanced to the degrees set above their names as members of the classes of May 2020, August 2020, and December 2020.
All in favor, please say yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Oh, yeah, I didn't think so. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, and next, thank you. For the graduate degrees, Dean Lisa Gloss.
Thank you. I would like to move that the university faculty recommend to the President and the Board of Regents that, effective at the closing dates for each graduating class, those graduate students who have completed degree requirements and whose names remain on the official list of degree candidates be advanced to the degrees set above their names as members of the classes of May 2020, August 2020, and December 2020.
All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed? That's the most fun thing we vote on. All right, thank you. Approval of the minutes. Are there any changes to the March 26th minutes? Okay. Announcements, information items. There are 4. Probably the most significant is we finally, after 10 versions, have updates to the posthumous degree policy that's linked on the website. This will be an update to the Educational Policy and Procedure Manual, and it is a systems policy that has all colleges now. And in my report, let's see, the investigation update. So I reached out to Danielle Hess, who's our AG, asking her for an update, and we don't have an ETA on when the investigation will complete. What I do know is that she reached out to the investigator who has been conducting interviews. So she's interviewed former Provost Montoya twice. I reached out to former Provost Montoya, and she's their provost, or Mitzi told me that she's suggested other people for the investigator to talk with. So I'm not sure who was interviewed. And the other aspect is the investigator was provided all of the electronic communications in email form that was either part of a FOIA, Freedom of Information Act request, or a pending Freedom of Information Act request. So to the best of what I know today, all of the stuff that, all of the email exchanges surrounding this that could provide insight into these allegations had been provided to the investigator. As soon as the investigation is complete, and again, I don't know the answer to that because we gave the investigator the latitude to determine scope or determine length and depth of the questions. So are there any questions on those 2 updates? Oh, wait, I'm sorry, that 1 update. Okay, so the next is, given these extraordinary circumstances, I would like to ask that Faculty Senate be willing to come back to special session if needed prior to the end of term, which is May 15th. So typically how it works is that this is our last Senate meeting for the year. And then in the summer, Senate steering sort of takes over to handle routine things. But we are in a very much not routine world right now. So I would pledge that this would only happen under extraordinary circumstances, but I just want to put it out there that if decisions are needing to be made, we want to have the faculty be on board with as many people as possible. Any questions on that? Okay, addition or changes to today's agenda?
I have an addition, Alex Dimitrov.
Okay, Alex.
Yeah, I would like to move that discussion items 1, 2, and 3 moved as action items corresponding with 15, 16, and 17.
And
Do I
I
have
would
a
like
second?
to second that.
Okay, we have a second. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Yeah.
Yes.
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 Okay. Oh, I should have, yes, it's okay. Okay, agenda items, action items. Recommendation from the Academic Affairs Committee to approve the undergraduate major change bulletin number 11, exhibits J, J1, addendum 1 courses, addendum 1 requirements. Casey is here to discuss. All in favor, please say yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
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 Any opposed? Passes. And I promise by this, next time we do this, that we'll have some sort of online voting, so we don't have to do this by speaking out loud. Action item number 2, recommendation from the Academic Affairs Committee to approve the UCOR Change Bulletin number 4, Exhibits K, and Casey is here. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed? Action item number 3, recommendation from the Academic Affairs Committee to approve the revision to Rule 110, undergraduate requirements for graduation, Exhibits L. Casey is here. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Action item number 4, or I sorry, any opposed? Action item number 4, recommendation from the Academic Affairs Committee to approve the revision to Rule 6, transfer credit, 15 credit by examination, 16 military credit, and 17 credit for prior learning, Exhibits M. Casey is here to discuss. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed? Action item number 5, recommendation from the Academic Affairs Committee, Professional Health Sciences Committee, and Graduate Studies Committee to approve the proposal for posting grades to transcripts by session instead of by term, Exhibits N. Casey, John, and Alex and Umesh are here. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed? Action item 6, recommendation from the Professional Health Sciences Committee to approve the Major Change Bulletin number 4, Exhibits O and O1. John is here. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed? Please say no. Action item number 7, recommendation from the Professional Health Sciences Committee to approve Rule 34, repeat courses, Exhibits Q. John is here. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed, please say no. Number 8, recommendation from the Graduate Studies Committee to approve the Graduate Major Change Bulletin number 6, Exhibits R. Alex and Umesh are here. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed, please say no. Action item number 9, recommendation from the Graduate Studies Committee to approve a new plan for a graduate certificate in teaching college mathematics. Exhibits S and S1. Alex and Umesh are available. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed, please say no. Number 10, a recommendation from the Graduate Studies Committee to approve a revised plan for the graduate certificate in Systems Engineering Management, Exhibits T and T1. Alex and Umesh. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed, please say no. Number 11, recommendation from the Graduate Studies Committee to approve the revised plan in PhD in Statistical Sciences, Exhibits U and U1. Alex and Umesh. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed, please say no. Number 12, recommendation from the Graduate Studies Committee to approve the Graduate School Policies and Procedure Manual, Exhibits V, V1, V2, and V3. Alex and Umesh are present. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed, please say no. Action item 13, recommendation from the Faculty Senate Steering Committee to amend the Faculty Senate Constitution, Article 2, Section 1, and Article 2, Section 3D, Exhibits W. Comments or questions? All in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed, please say no. Recommendation from the Faculty Senate Steering Committee to allow the committee to carry out all necessary functions of the Faculty Senate during the periods of May 16th through August 15th, 2020. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed, please say no. And now we're on to our new action items. Action item 15, recommendation from the Graduate Studies Committee to approve the request to drop graduate certificate in construction management, exhibits X, X1, and X2. Alex and Umesh are here. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Just a moment, please. Any opposed, please say no. Hold on just a moment. Judy, what?
Action item 2, discussion item 2, which is now an action item, is the same as action item 5, which has already passed.
I see it differently.
Wording isn't the same.
I believe it's the same.
Oh, I know what happened. I'm sorry. So yes, what we're looking at is former discussion item number 2, which is now moot because it has been replaced by action item 5. So that was due to 3 committees, not 2 committees having to weigh in on that. So it's on the agenda, so we vote for it anyway. So this is discussion item or action item, new action item 16. Recommendation from the Graduate Studies Committee to approve the grade posting memo exhibits Y and Y1. Alex and Umesh are here. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed, please say no. Last one, action item 17, recommendation from the Academic Affairs Committee to approve the revision to Rule 140 transcripts, Exhibits Z. Casey is here. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed, please say no. Right. We are done with that. Constituent concerns. Are there any constituent concerns?
Greg, can I chime in here?
Oh, yes, sorry, Dave.
So probably just need to make a quick announcement about FSC Faculty Status Committee. We're trying to balance the committee with more career track faculty. And we need several more nominees. So if any senators want to, they can send me, David Turnbull, any career track faculty nominations for Faculty Status Committee. If you could do that, I would appreciate it. Thank you so much.
And Dave, your email address is?
Bull, BULL at WSU.edu. It's very, very easy.
I just wanted to make you say that out loud.
Yeah, I know you did.
And we are, it seems appropriate, and not personally. Anyway, and we will be monitoring constituent concerns. And again, just as things come up in the next month prior to the end of session, we're monitoring constituent concerns all the time. We will move any of those to the appropriate administrative office and get responses as soon as possible. So no other constituent concerns?
I have a question. How will you inform if a special session's needed? How will that work out?
If we have a special session, and again, only under extraordinary circumstances, I would ask that Gail contact Faculty Senate and choose one of these sort of standard Thursday times. All right, so since this is our last meeting, I just wanted to thank all of the Faculty Senate for work under extraordinary effort. And I also want to put a particular thank you to all of our committee chairs. We have committee chairs that are rotating off that have been serving in these roles for years. And I just have to say, you know, that we just went through 17 items. Every one of those items would not be there were it not for the Faculty Senate committee chairs. So they do an extraordinary job, and they keep us on track. So thank you. And I'd also like to give thanks to Rob and John and Leslie and AOI, who have helped us make this very difficult transition to all Zoom. Even before that, I mean, they helped us get Senate on Zoom. And had we not already been on Zoom, we would have been in a lot worse situation than we are now. So just a shout out to Academic Outreach and Innovation, and specifically these three people that have just gone out of their way to help us. All right, well, thank you, everyone. And
Well, Laura, we're not done yet, Greg.
Oh, what's wrong? Dave?
Well, I want to thank you, Greg Crouch, for your rigorous work this year. You worked tirelessly to represent the faculty on our campuses, and you constantly looked out for our students' best interests and managed our system of shared governance in an incredibly professional manner. And I think we should all say thank you to Greg Crouch. Thanks, Greg.
I agree.
I'd like to second that.
Thank you, Greg.
Absolutely.
Well done, Greg.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks.
Thank you, Greg.
Thanks, Greg.
Kudos, Greg.
You're the best.
You're the best, Greg.
Well
Thank
done,
you.
Greg.
The check's in the mail, Greg.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
Thanks for your leadership, Greg.
Thank you. Okay, we are adjourned.